Hello, welcome back to another day in the arena. It is me, it's CGB. This is not a drill. Wizards couldn't wait 2 more days for my vacation to actually finish. No, they had to get me back in the dojo 2 days early to announce on some announcements because they had to ban restrict, and then in a surprising fashion, they did tell us that bans were coming, but in a surprising fashion, they announced an insane amount of buffs and nerfs for Alchemy, all on the same day. So yeah, you get it wasn't supposed to be this way, but you get a kind of easy mode bonus reacty content video to let you know what the bursts and nuffs are, and yeah, get some reaction to that. I mean, who can turn down cheap reaction content? Not me, not this guy, not this streamer. Thank you all for the kind messages throughout my break. It was a happy holiday. I'll have more to say about it on my stream, which is on the 27th, which is Thursday. So come join me on Twitch, and then daily YouTube videos resume the next day. So the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Okay. Let's get into it. Let's talk banned and restricted announcement because Wizards blew it up today. Oh my God. So standard, all runs Epiphany is banned. This is the one that surprises nobody. Extra turns has been, it hasn't been cool for a long time. Like, it's been a long time since extra turns were cool. And this absolutely just, it went on way too long. Some would say, tinfoil hat, that Wizards kept All Runs Epiphany in standard to make people try Alchemy. Just saying. But this one is hilarious to me. Divide by Zero is banned. Oh yeah, that card that keeps returning your spells and your permanents to your hand all the darn time and learning at the same time. Banned. Okay, it's an annoying card for sure. I get that it's a totally annoying card. But banned? Banned? Whoever looked at Divide by Zero and said it's ban worthy? Who even had it in their top 10 for Strixhaven before the set came out? It's wild. I'm kind of speechless on Divide by Zero here. Now, it has basically turned into an automatic 4 of in every blue deck because of the way both Alchemy and standard formats have worked out. It sees no play in Historic, to my knowledge. Absolutely none. Did this have to happen? It feels like this is a make people happy, but they don't want to touch Lear and they don't want to touch Hullbreaker Horror because those are new mythics and rares from recent sets. So they're like, Strixhaven, let's ban the Strixhaven uncommon instead. I guess it's nicer to your wild cards. I mean, there's upside. Maybe people will play actual counter spells now. I don't know if that's upside for anybody. There's a million 3-mana ways to counter things instead of dividing them by 0. Teachings of the Archaics just got nerfed big time. That card is basically dead. So if you spent your rares on teaching the Archaics, well, I'm very sorry, but looks like those aren't useful anymore. Faceless Haven is banned. A few people, myself included, thought it was the best card in Kaldheim. I think when I saw this card, this 4/3 critter land in standard, I was like, that's the best card in the set, or at least the best creature in the set. The best reason to play Snow. Can you tell I've been gone? Can you tell I need a vocal warm up? I've been in this like a few minutes. My throat already hurts and I'm misspeaking every other word. I'm not nervous. I'm just haven't been sitting in a room talking to myself every day for 2 to 3 hours like I used to be. Anyway, longer than that, actually. More than that. All right. Haven. It hits mono white and it hits mono green. Does it really hit mono green that hard? There's other creature lands, and Mono Green has a pretty good one in Lair of the Hydra, and they make use of their mana. They also play Kazandu Mammoth and Tangled Florahedron, so there's no longer as bad a cost to playing those cards. They still want Blizzard Brawl, because that's a rock-solid removal spell, so they'll probably still run Snow-Covered Forests to some extent, but I don't think the Haven loss hurts Mono Green very much, and Mono Green, if you haven't been tracking Standard, has been the best deck. If you keep up on meta and numbers, Mono Green, by far, it's been the champion. So I don't know. The thing that All Runs Epiphany being banned That opens up like black mid-range decks to try to challenge green, but I still think green might be too good. I think it still might be better than those black decks, even when they specifically try to beat it. But we will see. It definitely opens some breathing room in standard, and I'm sure some of you are wondering, does this mean I'll play standard? I will play standard if standard looks interesting. And while getting these 3 cards banned in standard is kind of interesting, I just wait till you see Alchemy. Holy crap. Holy crap. Blood on the snow. And I don't mean the card. There's just a lot of blood on the snow because it's winter out. All right. In Legacy, Ragavan, Nimble Pilfer is banned. Yippee-ki-yay. The Monkey Pirate, too good. Out of there. For people who follow Legacy, okay. In Historic, Memory Lapse is banned to the surprise of, I think, absolutely nobody. This card never should have been introduced. Probably the most annoying counterspell that could exist. They got rid of it. Teferi Time Traveler has been rebalanced and unbanned. So Wizards is trying to unleash the power of the rebalancing thing to Historic now and give hopefully some Historic mages something to get a little excited about instead of just stuff to complain about. But God knows you can't stop them. All right, but Teferi has been rebalanced and unbanned. And this is not the rebalanced version that you see on the screen right here. The rebalanced version we'll get to, I believe, is 4 mana. And now the opponent can only cast spells at the time they can cast a sorcery, or no, can cast spells on their turn. So it takes away the when they could cast a sorcery thing that inadvertently buffs cool abilities like Finale of Promise. I think that's the name of the card. It's one of the finales, the red finale. Anyway, this all goes into effect on January 27th, so pretty soon. And then the fun part, you can read through what they have to say about things. In October 2021 banned and restricted update, we announced no changes in standard in anticipation of Innistrad Crimson Vow's release soon following. Yeah, that worked out well. That what did Crimson Vow do to the meta? Nothing. Those vampire decks running wild. Anyway, since then, we've heard community feedback. They heard it before the announcement, to be honest. And there hasn't been enough change in the metagame over time. While a good number of decks are seeing success on MTG arena ladders and each has strengths and weaknesses against the others, the most played archetypes have remained largely the same over the past months, the past like 5 months. As such, we have a set of changes targeted at some of the top decks, including Blue-Red Epiphany, you don't say, and other blue control decks, Mono-White Aggro, and Mono-Green Aggro. Our goal is to create some churn among the current top decks, open up additional angles from which to attack the metagame, and leave room for more experimentation and innovation with the release of Neon Dynasty. This is a big, important thing for Standard. Do not have your preview season for your new set completely ruined by a lame format where nothing in your new set is strong enough to even compete with the existing format. That is exactly what killed, and I mean killed, Crimson Vow. We had a fresh rotation, and then Midnight Hunt, it was very exciting, but it all turned into Alrund's Epiphany and like snow-based monocolor aggro, which those were around before the rotation anyway. All right. And then we had Crimson Vow coming out, and everybody looked at the cards from Crimson Vow, and it was all the same. Well, this doesn't beat Epiphany, and this isn't good enough to make the cut in mono white or mono green, so it's trash. And you ended up with almost a dead set, with like Hullbreaker Horror and Meathook Massacre being some interesting outliers. And like they don't want to do that to Kamigawa, so it's good that they do this now, even if it messes with my vacation. I'm still going to be bitter about. Just kidding. The Epiphany is a card we highlighted in the October announcement as having potential for negative impact on metagame diversity. Yeah. While blue decks with powerful late game spells can sometimes do good work as natural predators of mid-range decks. Stop being an apologist. I love blue. I'm covert go frickin' blue. I know very well. I know very, very well when blue is too good, and blue is too good with Alrund's Epiphany. We do not have to make a point of that a blue deck is useful. Let's just all call it what it is. It was way too much. A deck that chains together extra turns can be particularly difficult to stop and frustrating to play against when it represents too large a portion of the metagame. The foretell ability of Epiphany makes it harder to interact with, as one of the traditional answers to big spells is hand disruption. While not entirely dominant throughout the MTG arena ladders, especially in Best of One, Epiphany decks have been particularly popular and successful at the highest levels of competition and in tournament play, especially in Best of One. All right, come on, think about it. It's Best of One has always been aggro dominated. They're toilet decks. You can play them on the toilet. You get your games fast. You get your wins fast. Of course, that's what people are interested. If you were ever in the top 1,000 Mythic for the last couple months, and I can't speak for this month, but the months before that, Epiphany was everywhere at High Mythic. It was the meta at High Mythic, even though you'd look at untapped.gg and it would say the meta was 25 to 30% mono white. In High Mythic, like, it's the same story. The more competitive it gets, the more Epiphany you saw. And that's just because the nature of the deck is that it's kind of the villain. It's very redundant. It's not particularly fun to play for most normal people. I don't enjoy it, and I love blue. It makes sense that it would kind of only exist in certain spots. Anyway, even without access to Epiphany, our data gives us concern that other blue decks are poised to reduce metagame diversity by shutting out certain types of strategies. Oh, you mean like Leer and Hullbreaker Horror? Divide by Zero gives those decks flexible early interaction that is especially effective against slower, more powerful spells and permanents. The ability of Divide by Zero to cover a variety of angles of attack frequently gives these decks enough time to enact and protect a powerful endgame soft lock state, often using Leer, Disciple of the Drowned, or Hullbreaker Horror. It's like they know those cards exist. Good to know. Therefore, we're choosing to ban Divide by Zero to make blue control decks less effective against other mid-speed and slow decks and force them to be more intentional about which threats they choose to prepare for. I don't agree. I don't think it's going to do that job. I think now they're going to play counter spells, and it makes Leer significantly worse that Divide by Zero isn't in the format, but it's still a good sideboard card to use with Fading Hope. So Leer will be like a sideboard card. You'll bring it in against decks like Mono Green, where having Fading Hope and Leer is already close to a soft lock in the realm of Divide by Zero. And then everybody else, you get counter spells and Hullbreaker Horror. You're welcome. But I will have fun unleashing that upon the standard world if I play some standard. I'm just saying that that's a pretty easy pivot, I think, for blue decks. And if people don't see that yet, they will very soon. Also, this is standard. Goldspan Dragon is not nerfed. You can definitely play Is It Dragons. I bet Is It Dragons, which didn't always run Divide by Zero, will still do okay without Alrund's Epiphany. They can run Alchemist Gambit, or they can just run more control. We'll see what happens there. The most winning decks on the arena ladder and among the most popular have been mono white and mono green, while each owes part of its success to preying upon blue-red Epiphany. Yes. Both decks also have high win rates against the field, especially against many of the less popular decks on the fringes. Haven represents a lot of power of those monocolored decks, by virtue of being efficient on its own and by providing resilience against creature sweepers and targeted removal. To weaken these two aggressive archetypes without fundamentally changing their game plan, Haven is banned. The principal offense of Faceless Haven to me was the requirement of the Snow mana base, which basically requires you to be monocolor because you couldn't play your dual lands in it easily. Every pathway and every chill land you played alongside Haven made it less likely you could activate Haven, so your decks had to be monocolored. They just had to be. So that pushes out a lot of 2-color aggro, 3-color aggro that could exist in the meta and make the meta way more interesting, because why would you play it when you could play mono green and mono white, which already have absolutely nutty cards up and down the curve. So this is a good ban. I think it hurts mono white a lot more than mono green. I think that mono white really needed this, and mono white's replacement, Cave of the Frost Dragon, takes way too much mana to put into it, and mono green's Lair of the Hydra is very efficient, and it can pick up counters from Ranger class. And yeah, I have a feeling that mono green is still very, very good. I have a feeling that mono white is okay. By the way, Faceless Haven, the 4/3. It has been significantly less impactful, and we've moved away from it in a lot of spots in Alchemy because of a 3/3-ness. I wonder, I mean, it kind of makes, it had to be banned in Standard, but now you can still play it in Alchemy. How does that affect the meta? And plus, I guess bans in Standard, you're going to get wild cards anyway. So here's the best of both worlds for you economy, the people who cannot let the economy thing go. If they ban a lot of cards in Standard and adjust a lot of cards in Alchemy, then you get a lot of wild cards and you get churn in Alchemy. It's, it's Miley Cyrus. It's the best of both worlds. All right. Legacy, blah, 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 Ragavan, blah. Anyway, if you came for the Legacy announcement, welcome to the channel. We don't do that here. Go watch some pros. I'm sure there are some Legacy masters out there on YouTube. I don't even know who they are. Blue decks in Historic continue to remain strong. Memory Lapse is officially moving to banned. No kidding. Additionally, as we have rebalanced Teferi, Time Raveler into a form where we believe is safe for Historic, it will be removed from the banned list. Read more about the rebalances and the rebalance to Teferi. So, in a way, they already did the rebalancing, is basically what they're saying, and they like the way it played in a Mirror Mirror event that they ran last July, and here you go. You get a 4-mana Teferi in Historic, and we're going to dive right into that right here with the Alchemy rebalancing for January 27th. Hold on, I need a drink. It's been like sub-zero outside at night, so my Mountain Dew is partially frozen. Good stuff. Extra cold. It's like drinking a slushie. Anyway, the little things in life, guys. You go on vacation, you learn to appreciate the little things in life. So, Alchemy rebalancing. Strap in. If you thought this video was already long, it's getting longer. So since Alchemy's launch, we have been happy with the overall deck diversity in the format. Our intent with this round of changes is to better balance the play rates between top decks and ensure they all remain viable. We also hope that the minor adjustment to some of the top decks alongside buffs to other cards will allow more decks to compete at the highest level of play. After closely monitoring our first round of Alchemy rebalances, we're happy to report that they had minimal impact on Historic win rates among existing decks, but we also understand players' concern over unknown futures. Based on that feedback, we will be weighing the potential Historic impact more heavily in our rebalance decisions, starting with adjustments we're announcing today. They care about Historic. Doesn't mean you're going to forgive them, but maybe they won't goof it up quite so bad next time. Specifically looking back, like doing a retrospective of all the stuff with Alchemy last month, Luminarch Aspirant was probably the weirdest and worst thing they did. But we'll see if they can top that today. As with all balance and card pool changes, we will be carefully watching the way the metagame evolves as a result. If we see signs in Alchemy or Historic that these changes have had an unintended impact, we will move to correct that. If we see these changes have not done enough, we will correct that as well and continue doing so as often as necessary. As we've stated before, our goal for Alchemy and Alchemy rebalances is to keep the format interesting and engaging every time players sit down to play. That is their goal. It is not the economy. It is not your pocketbook. It's their pocketbook and having an interesting format. And I said this in the original Alchemy announcement video. It's like a pay to experience. It's a pay to play experience where you're putting in more money and there is risk of your cards getting nerfed and rebalanced without you getting wild cards. So it is expensive, but it's attempting to promise a better format, a better play experience, one that doesn't get as stale and boring as Standard has over and over again for years. So if you want a better experience, they're saying you have to be willing to accept these terms and pay this amount maybe for these cards, and stuff could get nerfed. If you're willing to engage with that, then you can have this different play experience. And I I think it's worth it. Several people think it's worth it. Several people don't think it's worth it. They have opinions. They can't stop yelling about it. Whatever. Anyway, I just want to say, like, look into yourself. Do you want to play Alchemy? It's very clear from today's actions that they're still going to make bans in standard and try to make that meta interesting. If you want to play Alchemy, play it. If you don't want to play Alchemy, it's okay. It looks like they're still going to try to do things with standard. That's a good thing. And there's Historic, which they're going to try not to hit as hard with Alchemy. Plus, you just got Teferi back. For some of us, that's really cool. I feel like there's a lot of things to be excited about, and there will always be people who try to focus on the things to be upset about, and I hope you don't become that person. That's a depressing way to live. Anyway, in addition to the 18 rebalance cards, we rebalanced Teferi Time Raveler, and the updated Alchemy version will be legal and historic. Yep. In the future, we'll be looking for similar opportunities to rebalance and unban cards currently on the historic ban list, with the understanding we have no intention of rebalancing iconic cards with significant Magic history like Brainstorm. They are not going to change Brainstorm, no matter how much they want it in the format. They're not going to change it because it's frickin' Brainstorm. It's been around since Ice Age. It's been cast a bazillion times across the Magic history. I wonder where that line is. If I were drawing the line, I would put the line right around War of the Spark, because that's when fire design philosophy kicked into high gear, and a world of nerfs is way more useful for the fire design philosophy. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there was an article about it. You can look it up, search for Wizards fire design philosophy. They basically intentionally tried to amp up power levels of cards to make the game more exciting. With fire design kicking in at War of the Spark, I would say I wouldn't try to rebalance things from before War of the Spark, but like starting with making Field of the Dead legendary, let's go. Like some of these things, these are adjustments that should be made, nerfs and buffs that should be made. That means we could get Oko back. Before you ask, will you get to keep your wildcards from the original banning? Okay. So they rebalanced Teferi, they put in Historic, and they don't take your wildcards away from when Teferi was banned. I love how they throw that in like it's a nice thing, as if they could. Can you imagine what would happen if they took wildcards out of your account? First of all, some people wouldn't have the wildcards. Would you just give them a negative balance? Now they have to open like 90 packs to get back to even. I mean, can you imagine? This line, it's like, we're doing you a favor. We're not taking those wild cards back. We've been without our Teferis, which was banned for over a year. And the fact that it was probably even floated as an idea in the boardroom to take the wild cards back by somebody, and some white knight of the community stepped up and was like, no, you will not take their wild cards back. They should delete this line. All it does is remind us just how brutal they are. Okay. All right. Here we go. Get another drink. Holy crap. This is a long one. The two primary goals with this set of changes are to make decks centered around the venture keyword action less clunky and more reliable at winning games. Venture. You could do it all kinds of things with buffs. This is kind of interesting, taking a keyword and a mechanic that never took off and trying to give it a life in standard by buffing the hell out of a specific keyword. That said, I hate venture. I've never liked venturing into a dungeon. Not for a second have I found that to be just good value. And all right. Anyway, let's go for the ride. Too many venture cards were clustered at 3 mana. We hope decreasing the mana value of various cards will open up more options to build around cards like Acererak, Nadar, Selfless Paladin, and Baris, Silvery Moon Ranger. Similarly, by making Triumphant Adventurer hit harder and turning Cloister Gargoyle into a 2-mana threat, letting Eliwick Tumblestrom ultimate a turn quicker, and having Acererak always create a zombie token, we are aiming for decks built around Venture to win more consistently after completing a dungeon. Card buffs. Acererak. Removed opponent's option to sacrifice a creature on the attack trigger. When it enters the battlefield, if you've completed Tomb of Annihilation, return it to its owner's hand in Venture. Whenever it attacks, create a number of 2/2 zombie creature tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. Unless they sacrifice a creature, then you couldn't get the zombie. Is that even good? Did they do anything to this card? I thought, all right, when I read this, I became convinced this would be a 2-mana card, or it would make a zombie every time you played it. If it made a zombie every time you played it, that card would be freaking sweet and ridiculous, and it would have to go. Jeez. I don't think that this did anything to this card. All right. Oh, man, their buff record wasn't good. If you could take issue with something, and I would be 100% on board with you, it would be that the buffs were terrible last time. They buffed bad cards into slightly less bad cards, and none of them were competitive anyway. So I really kind of need to see buffs that move things from a trash zone into a competitive zone, so it makes it feel like crafting those cards, we get more for them. That would help balance a lot of the economy concerns people have. This isn't it, but there's a million buffs here, so hopefully some others are. Assemble from parts. Lowered the overall cost, now requires 2 black mana. Ability costs 1 BB from 3B. So it's 1 black for an instant. Target creature in your graveyard perpetually gains 1 black. Exile it from your graveyard, shuffle it into library, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's 4/4 zombie, activate only as a sorcery. All right, so creature in the graveyard, target it, use ability. So the ability was 4 mana, and now it's 3. We felt the dream of reanimating a creature on turn 4 with Assemble from Parts was too difficult to achieve. Changing the ability's mana cost will make turn 4 reanimation much more consistent, but will require a heavier commitment to black to support the adjusted cost. I haven't played this card. I barely even know what it does. I saw a pretty cool Historic Brawl deck that used it with Gravebreaker Lamia. Did some cool loopy stuff, but I'm curious. It's an interesting reanimation jutsu, and it obviously wasn't good enough before. I guess it is an instant, so getting the thing back at instant speed can be pretty sweet. But, oh wait, never mind. This is an instant. Activate the ability only as a sorcery. What's the point of that? Okay, whatever. I'm still not excited about this card. Blood Rage Alpha, increased toughness. 3 and a red for a 4/4. Is that the only adjustment? Otherwise, it enters the battlefield, target wolf or werewolf fights, or the next wolf or werewolf you cast fights. It doesn't fight on its own. What kind of an alpha doesn't fight on its own? Come on. It looks like he's fighting to me. Okay, I still don't see it. How did the 3 toughness hold this card back? I mean, it's still attacked right at the Tyrant. It's still traded with what it needed to trade. I don't know. I guess there's a little tweak, just a little buff. I don't know if it's going to get Blood Rage Alpha any love. I don't see a good reason really to play the Alpha, but I guess if other things are nerfed, who knows? Cloister Gargoyle lowered the cost and increased the toughness. The cost is 1 and a white, down from 2 and a white, and the new power toughness is 0.3, increased from 0.4. Wizards with those super generous buffs, once again, increasing that toughness from 0.4 to 0.3. I don't know. This card at 2 mana is still, in my opinion, bad. A 2 mana 0.3 that doesn't do anything until a dungeon gets completed. I mean, if you're doing a lot of dungeon stuff, the dungeons still aren't completed till like turn 4 or 5. I don't think that's playable. Dungeon Descent, rules adjustment, decreased mana cost. They removed the enters the battlefield tapped. My God, was that egregious. That was so horrible. Cost 1 mana to activate, down from 4. So now it is enter the battlefield, tap for colorless, 1 and a tap an untapped legendary creature you control, venture into a dungeon, activate as a sorcery. They took a Black Lotus worth of mana off the activated ability. They let it enter the battlefield untapped. How scuffed was this card? I still don't think I'd play this. Okay, I might play it. And especially like in Historic Brawl, I will probably play this card. But it's still a sorcery. Activate only as a sorcery. If they had removed activate only as a sorcery, they could have even kept the mana cost a little higher, probably not much, and I might play it, but it still means you have to tap your legendary creature on your turn to venture into a dungeon once. No, I refuse. Oh my gosh, this could have been, and they also could have made it any creature instead of a legendary creature. Like, dude, this might be one of the worst cards ever made. At this point, they've cut all these things, and I still don't think it's any good, and it still has room to be playable. I don't know. Eliwick Tumblestrom decreased activated ability cost on the third ability from down to a 6 from a 7. It starts on a 4 and it goes to a 5 to a 6 and then an ultimate. Don't think it changes enough about the card. Don't think it changes enough about the card, but in a deck with enough venturing, now it's something you really want to play instead of something you could completely skip because it almost never mattered. But now you would really want to play it somewhere where you're venturing very, very often. But we still need much better buffs. Fate's Reversal. They lower the cost from 1B to a B. This is 1B for a sorcery. Return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand and venture. Okay. Raise dead. Tiniest upside you could possibly give it. Unlikely that you can still see that this can see a lot of constructed play. Find the Path now adds 2 mana of any one color instead of just green. So 2 and a green enchant land when it enters the battlefield, venture, tap it for 2 mana of any color. I don't know. Venture ramp? Is there venture ramp here? It looks like venture was supposed to be aggressive. Is there venture ramp? I don't think so. They're going to keep going. Puppet Razor, increased toughness. It was a 3/3, now it's a 3/4. Can't die to frostbite. 3 and a red at the beginning of your end step. Okay, this is the one where you exile and you seek. So I guess this card didn't get the play they wanted. I mean, every 4-drop against Divide by 0 is pretty bad. So yeah, I don't know. Are we going to see Puppet Razor? It didn't stick last time, but it is an interesting card. At Mythic, yeah, keep buffing it until it's good, I would say, because if you crafted this or opened this, you want to play it someday. Precipitous Drop, 1 in a black instead of 2 in a black. Still pretty bad compared to other removal in the format like Infernal Grasp. It's so much better removal. Of course, you play it because you're playing a ton of venture, and I still don't know if this is even hitting anything. Rahilda, I guess, is your best case scenario. You know me, always kind of a venture doubter. They haven't changed my mind yet. Triumphant Adventure is a 2/1 from a 1/1. This is a white and a black for a 2/1 Death Touch now, and when it attacks, it has first strike. That's not a joke, and it's a human. Humans are a good type. This is a much better card. This card is significantly better. It is very hard to stop. Basically, you don't block this, ever. Double blocking it is nasty. First strike and Death Touch is a pretty brutal combination, but now, in the past, like, you just let it hit you. It's just 1 damage. The venture isn't that much. 2 damage is a bit better. I don't think you can play this in a deck without other venture payoffs, though, unless there's like a really good black-white aggro. I don't see that. I mean, this is the best buff that the venture cards have received. I think it's not close. I don't know if it's good enough, though. Maybe next round, venture will be playable, guys. Okay, so those are the buffs, and now we're going into card adjustments. All right. Divide by 0. Whoa, rules adjustment. It only learns if it targets a spell or permanent with mana value 4 or less. Okay. So if you hit a Hullbreaker Horror, you don't learn. If you hit Leer, you don't learn. Hit Goldspan, you don't learn. That hurts a bit. I gotta tell you though, I usually divide a lot of 2s, 3s, and 4s. Like a lot of them. The nature of a fast format, and Alchemy is definitely one of those right now, is that most 5 and 6 drops are unplayable. This still hits Key to the Archive. I look at that we're going to see how hard that hits. I have a feeling this is fine. I have a feeling it doesn't hurt it very badly. We're aiming to promote higher mana value cards in Alchemy. Whoa. That is a stated purpose for the format. That is a stated goal. I am very curious if they can pull that off, because on one hand, we're aiming to promote higher value cards. On the other, we make cards like this one down here. Divide by Zero was stronger as it targeted more expensive cards, and this change will more evenly distribute its power. I take back what I said about the Whelp. It also promotes higher value cards. But I mean, the nature of formats that are fast and aggressive is that cheap cards rule the day. And I mean, okay. Anyway, rules adjustment. Now triggers on the upkeep. And it has haste. It has haste. It gets in for one, guys. It's totally fine now. It triggers on the upkeep. That's a huge change. The opponent has a full turn cycle to decide how to deal with it before it grants a real value, a real benefit. That's a pretty nasty nerf. I mean, we saw the damage that moving the phase that an effect happens, like with Luminarch Aspirant, can have. And I think that this is a pretty big nerf on the Whelp. Pretty brutal one. Yeah, I think Dragons will attempt to still be a deck, but they just lost their best draws. So they're going to have to play a little bit more fair. They don't just get to turn 3 Town Razor Tyrant, turn 4 play Goldspan Dragon and another dragon all the time. It's good. They're going to have to work for it. Their opponent's going to have to kind of be a lame duck. The haste is not completely forgettable, though. Damage, the way that damage stacks up really fast, this getting in for extra damage could matter. We'll see. All right. We are looking to make the explosive starts with Fearsome Whelp easier to interact with. Yep, it does achieve that. Changing the trigger from end step to upkeep will give decks an additional turn to profitably interact with it. Well, kind of. They still take a damage, but hey, it's fine. Haste is a small way to compensate. Yep, I mean, at least they kind of buff nerfed it instead of just nerfing it. Hullbreaker Horror. Oh, I'm here. The Kraken. All right. They removed the spell can't be countered. Okay. Removing the spell can't be countered will make the horror easier to interact with in both control mirrors and other blue decks. Since blue control decks also have access to Malevolent Hermit and Leer, we felt removing the third instance of can't be countered will make the mirror more fun. This change will also make aggro control more viable, as cards like Disdainful Stroke can more reliably interact with threats in the pure control decks. It's interesting that this only hurts Hullbreaker Horror in the blue versus blue matchup. Everywhere else, it is the same beast. And honestly, while you liked obviously the ability to can't be countered was very important in the blue versus blue matchup. The fact that counter spells were kind of not being played because of Divide by Zero, it also had a lot to do with things like this, which you just couldn't counter when you needed to. So maybe more counter spells will come back, Divide by Zero taking a little nerf. Maybe countering this is important enough to play some counter spells in your blue deck. Here's the thing. It is still just game over against green aggro decks. If you don't play counter spells, it's the same card. If the opponent doesn't have a counterspell and you have Hullbreaker Horror, it's the same monster it was before. The same game-ending Leviathan. And I'm kind of surprised because I appreciate you, Wizards. You're looking out for me. But there's somebody in Wizards doing these things, trying to make the blue mirror more fun and not worrying at all about the absolute carnage that blue cards like this, infuriating carnage that blue cards like this inflict on the rest of the format. Like, this is not a fun way to lose. I mean, they're talking about making the blue mirror more fun, but this is not a fun way to lose a game of Magic to Hullbreaker Horror playing a deck of any of the other non-blue colors. It is painful. I find really funny what they try to balance around. It feels like there's somebody out there who really loves blue, and they are really trying to balance around blue, while there is so much of the community actively hating blue. I'm going to tell you, as the blue guy, I like it when blue is just a little bit worse than everything else, because it takes real work to make it good. When it's easily the best and they're balancing formats around how to make blue good, I'm kind of I'm like, okay, I'm hipster blue. I didn't want it to be so cool. All right. The change will make aggro control more viable. Yeah, we'll see. Aggro control, the official archetype from Wizards of the Coast. Inquisitor Captain has a rules adjustment. It added, if you cast it to the enters the battlefield ability. So now it reads, when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it and there are 20 or more creature cards with mana value 3 or less, do the thing. All right, they turned off the Glasspool Mimic thing, because the Glasspool Mimic would enter the battlefield, copy the Inquisitor Captain, but you didn't cast it, so you don't get another round. It also turns off Teleportation Circle, Ephemerate in Historic, and various other shenanigans. And this is fine, because really the Clerics deck was just trying to squeeze Glasspool Mimic into the deck anyway. They didn't really want blue. I think that this is still an insanely good card in the format, and something that the creature decks are going to continue to build around unless some other buffs, nerfs hit in this thing that really mess it up. But this is part of the thing. If the Inquisitor Captain is in your format and easily splashable, why would anybody ever, and I mean ever, play Blood Rage Alpha? They could play Inquisitor Captain. Why would they play cards that cost creatures that cost 4 mana that aren't Inquisitor Captain and aren't the Tyrant, which maybe we're getting to? Yeah, anyway, you want to talk about like diversity in the format? Any deck with a lot of small creatures should probably add white and Inquisitor Captain to it. Just saying. All right. But pushing out the Glasspool Mimic interaction and the Soul Herder thing in Historic, that actually is really good. It does kind of make it so that the Esper Clerics deck isn't the strictly best version, and you can explore, I guess, a little more Inquisitor Captain space, if that's really a thing. Oh god. Lear, Disciple of the Drowned. They added during your turn to the flashback ability. What? As long as it's your turn, each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback. The flashback is equal to mana cost. Oh. Oh, that hurts. Oh, that's such a mean way to wreck this card. Oh, the spells can't be countered was kind of a fun line of text. Why don't you remove the spells can't be countered line of text now? We can't even cast them during our opponent's turn, and we can't protect Lear with a counter spell. Lear literally craps on itself. Oh god. Is Lear dead? We're aiming to make Lear less effective when combining with Fading Hope and Divide by Zero. The 2-bound spells are very effective at protecting Lear and controlling creatures. This change helps players remove Lear, favorably attack, and interact with the opponent's graveyard on their turn. I'm not giving up on the cheeky one of Lear for the super long game. I'm not giving up on the cheeky one of Lear, but I might. I might end up playing it and finding out that I'd rather have Cosmina. Cosima. Anyway, Kazuma. Remember when I liked that card? Remember that when that was my Yorion replacement? Then Lear came along. Guys, this is brutal. There is somebody who works at Wizards, and they have a certain unique set of skills. For somehow, some way, they can just nerf a card into the ground with like adding a line of text instead of like changing casting cost or power toughness. They can just nerf a card directly into the ground. They did it to Luminarch Aspirant. They did it to Fearsome Whelp now. And Lear, I think, is just dead. Why would you play this now? It's hard to picture wanting to play this anymore. Maybe because with Key to the Archive, if it still has Time Warp after we're done with this article, God knows. Maybe you still want to play Lear to take all the turns. I don't know. We'll look at it. But it feels like nerf, that feels like a hard nerf. You know what I mean? Like somebody at Wizards has a specific talent for just ruining cards with a line of text. Faceless Haven, they did a good job. Goldspan Dragon, Isika's Chariot, all those cards, they still see play, but they're so much less of what they used to be. This Lear one is particularly feels like a dagger, you know, like a well-placed surgical shot to the heart. And what it would only be sweet irony if it's the same person doing the buffs, because they can't buff a card to save their freaking life. All right, let's move right along. Sanguine Brushstroke. Removed life gain from sacrificing the blood token trigger. So now when you sack your blood, you don't drain. So it's basically now it really is like a 3-mana Blood Artist, almost all the way. The only extra thing you get is the blood token. Removed life gain. Wait, removed life gain from it. Whenever you sacrifice a blood token, each opponent loses 1 life. Oh, they still lose the life. Oh. Then I don't think that's a very big nerf at all. I guess it makes it easier to race and gives you a bit more of a chance to race the black deck, but it's still insanely hard to race Blood Artist. And them draining you out is still the main point. Okay. I don't think that this is a major nerf. I think that this is fine. And I think that the black decks all get a lot better from the changes here. Especially to dragons. Yeah, I think the black decks and Lear. Yeah, I think the black decks have a real chance of making a comeback. So this being a minor nerf, I think it leaves black in a pretty good spot. We are specifically targeting how the Brushstroke matches up against aggressive strategies. We opted to change Brushstroke instead of the Meat Hook Massacre to minimize the impact to Historic and have less of the deck's power concentrated in a single card. Removing the life gain from the enchantment will allow aggressive decks to focus their answers on the Conjured Blood Artist and overall increase the chances of pushing through lethal damage. All right, so they're trying to help out aggro. They really are. Like, the format at the highest level in the tournaments that took place while I was gone, yes, I still look at those things. I still watch some Twitch. Very blue, very control-y. They are definitely taking their shots at control here. All right, Townraiser Tyrant. Added non-basic as a targeting restriction. So now it says, target non-basic land you don't control loses all abilities. It has to target a non-basic. It doesn't seem like much of a nerf. Seems like that's what it was doing anyway. So we are aiming to promote more monocolor decks in Alchemy and provide a few opportunities to play around the dragon's ability. Multicolored decks can include more basic lands to reduce their chances of being denied a specific color of mana and play around turn 3 Townraiser Tyrant. So they're trying to unpromote monocolor decks in Standard, and they're trying to promote them in Alchemy. Weird. Also, even if you're monocolor, your monocolor deck is probably aggro. And even if it's not, even if it's a slower deck like Hall of the Storm Giants, you would still play that in blue. You need to play those lands early. Those creature lands, you need to play them on turns 1 or 2 to be good. And there are modal DFCs, so you end up playing a lot of tapped Shatterskull Smashings and Emiria's Skyclaves in the early game. It feels to me like even the monocolor decks are going to get bit hard by Townraiser Tyrant. It does give you the opportunity to make interesting land choices and try to play around the Tyrant's ability if you're on the draw and the opponent goes turn 1 red source and you're like, I'm probably against Townraiser Tyrant. Maybe I won't play this creature land. But that doesn't sound fun. That sounds just bad. I don't think this changes the card significantly at all. I don't think any deck in Alchemy can afford the play pattern they're talking about. I think they all still want to play creature lands early. So I think Townraiser Tyrant still, I think you're still the boss here. Of course, if the opponent does just go basic, and you're looking at your Townraiser Tyrant, it is a significantly worse card. 4-mana, 4/4 flyer vanilla has not shined at any point, but it's not a terrible card. And I would say any deck that plays basic is probably behind in Alchemy. Like, you don't have any power in your mana base. You don't have any flexibility. I don't know. We're going to see how that plays out. Maybe I'm underestimating this nerf. This might be one I don't really understand until I play the card. But it doesn't look like a big nerf to me. Card legality. Teferi. Guess who's back? Back again. 2 white, blue. 5 starting loyalty. Well, up from 4. Okay, but there's no ultimate. Static ability. Opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So they did like play around with this a lot. The higher loyalty makes it much more likely to live. The -3 is still freaking sweet. I will still play Teferi in Historic. I hope they unban it in Historic Brawl. That would be nice. In fact, they should unban a lot of cards in Historic Brawl. Maybe that's a different video. When I found out that they banned, and I didn't do a video on it before, I didn't even know they did it, they banned Agent of Treachery Ugin and Field of the Dead. I think those are the worst bans in Historic Brawl history. Not close. Some of the dumbest bans I think I've ever seen. Maybe I'll get into that in another video. But Teferi, Time Raveler, coming back to Historic, is something exciting for the format. I want to see this card succeed. Many good memories of Teferi. Very cool Teferi card when it wasn't being completely oppressive, miserable, and needed to die. So I think that these adjustments are good for it. Can't believe they didn't print the card with the you may cast sorcery spells. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. I can't believe they didn't print it with that text in the first place. The way it turned off so many spells like Finale and it turned off Emergent Ultimatum was so stupid. All right. Wow, that was long. But hey, if you missed me, you just got nearly an hour of me reacting to these new nerfs and buffs and bans and all unbans and whatever all this is. And I'm really looking forward, of course, to getting to play with the cards and experience the new formats myself. Let me know what you think of the changes in the comments. I'm excited to be back. I don't know if you can tell. I don't know if I radiate the amount of enthusiasm I have. And the daily gameplay videos will return. You'll probably get your first one on Friday. I'll be streaming all day on Thursday. There's going to be some big announcements on Thursday. So make sure you come out to Twitch, check that out. And of course, if you're a YouTube member, hit the join button below. The Twitch VODs will be posted on YouTube as I was doing before my break, so that you can catch up with them on YouTube at 2x speed without going to Twitch if you don't like it over there. But yeah, if you join and become a member, you get access to those. So how do I end these things? It's been a freaking while. Thank you for watching this video. As always, I will see you in the next video. What is that thing I say? Oh yeah, the truest thing I say. You're cool.